I've been looking at some of the articles coming out of Germany and South Africa, actually, and they're talking about water being more valuable than gold. So I think we need to take that kind of approach to it. I'm not sure that there's planning for how we develop this province in related at all to the water availability. For instance, the city of Calgary wants to grow, and yet we're not even convinced that this is where the city of Calgary should actually be. We maybe should be growing in Canmore, not in downtown down the Bow River here, because we just don't know what the long-term availability of water is actually going to be here. And then you see, for instance, we're approving a lot of developments up towards Banff and Canmore and those places, and whether those developments should go ahead on the basis of the water that will never get to Saskatchewan, I don't really know. I mean, we have to answer these kind of questions, and so that was the other aspect of what I was looking for from this province, was some indication that they're doing river basin modeling, which is all of the relationship between the rainfall that comes, whether the aquifers are being filled up, and whether or not the usage is meeting the supply, and all of those aspects, plus the social aspects of irrigation water for fields versus urban water uses versus recreational water uses, whatever. We don't even factor in the ducks or the birds, or the fish for that matter. I'm just concerned that we're not putting this science together at the level that we need to be able to appreciate what's happening to our own environment.
Okay, I'm Ian Skinner, and I live in Sturgeon County, and we're within the area structure plan, the Calahoo, Villeneuve Sand and Gravel area. So our concerns here have been, of course, the land use decisions made by the county regarding environmental legislation either being not applicable or omitted during land use plan decisions. And my background is 25 plus years with an environmental resource management background. And most recently, we've identified a 10-meter water table decline in the area with an 8-kilometer cone of depression. And at this time, no level of government has come to us to advise of this huge decline in the water table. And also there's a perception maybe that there's APEGA members working outside of their jurisdiction or area of expertise.
Recent Maclean's magazine, an article about Beverly McLaughlin. They asked her what her job was when she was a Supreme Court judge. She says, "My job was to apply the law to rectify inequalities that were not justifiable under the Charter." That's what we want to do. We want to bring that attention to the point where a decision has to be legally made.
Have very little understanding of the depth of the act and what it actually means. It has been manipulated by our municipalities. I have had a letter from our CAO, and he actually created a division of information from the Municipal Government Act, procrastinating their position on where they stand and where the AEP stands. So the act cannot be disseminated. When an act is in place, it has to be followed.
That you're allowed to strip the whole thing, and then maybe we'll decide whether or not, based on your appeal, whether or not we can go in and take the gravel. They've already opened the face to contamination. There's no doubt there. The interesting part is the surface water and the groundwater are one water. Everybody in the entire world knows that except Alberta. It's just expedient for them to say, no, this is groundwater. Oh, that's below the surface. That's groundwater. Oh, this is above the surface. This is surface water. What they've been doing is they've been calling any surface water, when you say, well, okay, you're interfering on an aquifer with the river. There's water there. You're diverting water. You don't have a license. You're messing it up. Then they say, no, we're calling that surface water runoff. They're bending all of the definitions in the Water Act, the spirit of the Water Act and what it says, and EPA too. They're bending it to fit industry.
We have municipal governments granting immunity to law to industry. They're granting immunity, they're grandfathering land use. The largest strip mining activity that we're seeing that's adversely affecting water presently is the oil sands. Number 2 is sand and gravel or aggregate in Alberta. Number 3 is coal. We need attention brought to what's happening here. This is a major, major issue. To keep from having, using, or enjoying one's statutory right, Section 21 of the Water Act, or freedom to use water, the basic necessity of life, cannot be mitigated, compensated, or remedied by any monetary award or damage that may be awarded later. According to the Public Lands Act, Section 54 prohibitions, it identifies irreparable harm. So purposely ignoring the municipal imposed duty by our municipal elected officials, according to Section 60 of the Municipal Government Act, during land use planning creates bylaws inconsistent with federal and provincial legislation, and it denies access to a statutory right to household users as described in Section 21 of the Water Act. And as the judge said, it's an inequality and not justifiable under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. We need to bring this forward in a legal manner so it can no longer be ignored. This is for all humanity.
I lost my home in High River flood. So my husband and I are in Nanton because of the High River flood. That eastern slopes is precious to our hearts, and I don't know why. I wasn't born and raised there. We came to that later on, and I just can't get enough of those views and those slopes. And to me, it's just critical that we protect those eastern slopes. It's one of the most beautiful places I believe that's left on this earth. When you're standing there and looking, you've got to realize that that has been there looking like that for 15,000 years. And for us to think that we're going to put a mine there and ruin everything, the water and everything, is just devastating to me. And we already are suffering in terms of habitat loss for the bluebirds and other animals that live in that area. So I'm really committed to all of those aspects of preservation. The grasslands also are big as a carbon sink. So that is also critical to looking after our environment.
I think one of the things that I've noticed in terms of what we programmed Gen Z with is that there's no future. Like, it's just doom and gloom. We've ended up creating this circumstance with our youth where they just say, like, well, why bother? So we've disillusioned them. We've ended up creating this crisis of purpose, this crisis of meaning. After the Industrial Revolution, when we started creating these conveniences, and it really accelerated after the beginning of the nuclear age, right? You could just go down to the store and get Doritos. You didn't need to make them out of your own flour, out of the wheat that you grew, out of anything. So for time immemorial, at least in recorded history, human beings' purpose and meaning was survival. But at the beginning of the nuclear age, the industrial technological revolutions that followed, all of a sudden, survival wasn't the purpose. And progress happens when people are challenged. So when people aren't challenged anymore, and when survival is not the name of the game, and they can have everything out of convenience, left, right, and center, the challenge then becomes meaning and purpose. And I think, in a strange way, ironically, covering our kids in bubble wrap is maybe, and then providing doom and gloom scenarios simultaneously has prevented them from discovering any sort of meaning or any sort of purpose or direction. They're just going to get depressed. They're going to become addicts. They're going to, and I don't blame them.
That reminds me of is the language we use around these things when we speak to the youth, because we call something 100-year flood, right? Well, if the next flood's not happening for another 100 years, I'm not going to be alive. So why should I care? Right? But the reality is that 100-year floods are not happening. They're more like 20-year floods. They're 15-year floods. And yes, you will be around for that. So the question is not, will I be here for? You will. And we need to stop calling things like, oh, it's the flood of the century, or it's like, this is record breaking for the last 100 years. It, like you said, Alex, it doesn't connect meaning. People say well, that's so far in the future. I don't care. But so first of all, I think we need the decision makers and the people who are in power to stop using this language, stop being inaccurate with the timelines, and actually call it what it is. Because the 100-year flood in 2013 was not a 100-year flood. In the 90s, they had the same flood happen. It just wasn't at the same level. What they're seeing now is every 15 to 20 years, these disasters are happening again. They're just getting worse. They might not be exactly the same, but they're getting worse. So I think they just need to be honest with, okay, listen, Mother Nature is going to still be here when we're all gone. If we want to be here with her, then we need to change how our relationship with Mother Nature and change our language with it and create ways that people can reinvest themselves into this.
Doom and gloom language was used so heavily to scare people into caring, but it doesn't work, and that's not the way. People care about the environment when they feel connected to it, when they feel like they have a sense of belonging to nature. That's when they care. That's when they want to help and make a difference. So we need to foster that through education, and not just informal education, but formal education in the curriculum. We need to provide access to everyone to outdoor spaces. And there's a lot of studies on equal access to the outdoors, as well as different emotions and feelings to the outdoors because of history. So we need to provide safe and equal access to outdoor spaces and to outdoor learning. And like you said, Andrea, starting it at a young age and having outdoor classrooms in our schools so that students have a safe place to do this through the curriculum. So it's just really addressing everything. And then having open and honest conversations with everyone, whether they're a 6th grader, a 12th grader, or someone who is in their 30s or 40s and maybe never had that education, but being able to be open and honest and have these conversations and show that it's okay to talk about this, but we're going to have a hopeful and solution-focused conversation instead. And I think just providing that space for everyone is such an important thing that we need to move forward to combat the crisis that we're in right now.
People can do something. It seems like it's very small. I'm going like 53 kilometers down Highway 533 and watching these bluebirds and caring for their nests and making sure that they have a home. That's one little person. But when you multiply it out by all the people across North America that are actually doing this same work, if kids only knew what that can be, because it's one little thing and it's fun. It's great fun to go out into the environment and see these little babies hatch out of their eggs and, watch them crawl around. They look like something out of Dr. Seuss when they're born. So the communication has to happen, because that is really hopeful work, and it's work that's being done. And there are multiple things that are happening all around in all aspects, but we are not getting enough information about it. We have to have an attitude that we can do things, we can make a difference, and we can leave a good legacy for our children.
Add that environmental aspect or that green aspect to your career that can give you that boost in meaning, I guess, or the onus of like, you must save the environment on an individual that's way too large of a concept to even comprehend. So find your own little thing that you can do and band together with people and make a change that way, I think is more the message we're trying to inspire people to do with my program.
Love, Andrea, you're talking about giving voices to people that aren't getting their voice heard, especially people that know the problems. I can say the same from the oil and gas industry. I was involved in the $1.7 billion that was injected to do the cleanup work, Indigenous led all the way. This is to me, it's the obvious no-brainer thing that I would love to foster, and I'm trying to foster in this conversation with Alex. And the youth as well, as Alex said, my boys have said to me just last week, yeah, we don't learn any of this in school. It's bananas, and this is not right. And we're having those conversations, though. As Alex said, we're taking responsibility and we're having those conversations and we're talking about a positive future. So, and I love that we talked about, this is a crisis of leadership. Lise, I love your example. You went from being a 30-year teacher to doing something extremely simple and tangible that people can get behind. And it brings community together, and it helps bluebirds, and it helps other birds. It does all of those and things. And so the one thing I did want to mention is we are also doing in the real life what we're trying to do in conversation. So again, as I said, we want to help restore the environment and restore that social stability. So we have a Save Our Slopes campaign that we're sponsoring the Gravity Well along with another group called Land Lovers. So please look up saveourslopes.ca. When I hear you guys speak, I see you all having a role in this work. Lise from an on-the-ground effort. Andrea, I hear a lot of social reform opportunity. Kip, getting the message out, getting kids excited about this stuff. Same with you, Nicole. And Alex is helping from a local level. He really is inspired by Big Hill Springs. He wants to start that initiative right there with that community.
Big Hill Creek Provincial Park.
Last few years, we've had more requests to teach self-regulation to adults. I love this graphic, this person on this hill with this raging storm. And it's kind of like, how do I stay on this hill, with this raging storm of life? It's called self-regulation skill set. It basically is a 7-week journey. So 7 skills, what we teach in 3 skill training areas of self-regulation, how to manage myself in the face of challenge. But it's 1 skill a week. It's a journal format. So you're working through this personally, but it's also designed to, you could do this with your spouse, partner, or small group of colleagues and make like a book study out of it. It's got discussion questions at the end of each chapter, and then little QR codes that take you to a video of me talking about sort of recapping the last week's skill and then introing the next week's skill, kind of what to be ready for. And then you end with your own personal plan on these 7 skills of how do I apply this in my life, and then able to work through that and also share that with others if you want to. So super excited about that. There's a lot of hope, I think, in understanding just a little bit of clarity and understanding about basics of human behavior combined with some skills. To me, those 2 things equal a lot of hope. And so I always want to send that message of hope out to people, that there are things that we can do that can help us and others feel better and do better.